There's a line from Van Morrison's song Sweet Thing that haunts me. I will never ever be so young again. And that's the problem, isn't it? You're never younger or more idiotic than you are right now. You will never wake up tomorrow and find yourself further from death. So what to do with that knowledge? Well, you seize the day. Or at least you think you do. But what does that even mean? Let's say, for the sake of argument, that there are 9 ways of seizing the day, which can be grouped into 3 distinct categories. 3 fundamental modes of seizure. Because this isn't just about living for another day. Oh no. This is about grabbing hold of it, bending time towards something meaningful, essential, or necessary. It's not a neutral act, nor is it, I would argue, a universal one. Seizing the day is always very personal, egoic, a reflection of how we believe consciously or instinctively that time should be spent, shaped, or secured. The anxiety of mortality doesn't just push us to act, it pushes us to act in accordance with our type. So here's the first of 3 categories: the moralists and the achievers, seizing the day as a kind of obligation.
For some, Carpe Diem is an ethical imperative. To waste a day is to betray its potential for order, for rightness, for virtue. This is the Enneagram One's dilemma. Each moment must be shaped, improved, made worthy. It cannot simply be, it must be refined, structured, perfected, we might even postulate. For the 6, Carpe Diem is laced with hypervigilance. The day must be seized, yes, but carefully, defensively, fortified against risk. The 6 seizes the day in the same way that a general seizes a battlefield, by mitigating uncertainty, ensuring that what is seized is secure. The 3, meanwhile, isn't shaping the day for virtue, but for proof. Proof that the day was not wasted, that it left behind evidence of success. To seize the day is to win it, to emerge from it with something tangible. Without progress, without achievement, time has simply slipped through our fingers. And then there's the 8, for whom Carpe Diem is a kind of battle cry. There is very little hesitation here, maybe not a great deal of philosophical quandary either. Time exists to be dominated. Life is something they happen to, not something that happens to them. To waste a day is not just inefficient, but a kind of submission, an abdication, a failure to impose will on the world. For these types, time is not to be enjoyed necessarily, but to be controlled. The day is seized not for itself, but for what it proves, secures, or accomplishes. Then we have a group called the experiencers, seizing time for love, for pleasure, and harmony, we might say. For some, Carpe Diem is predominantly relational. Time is only fully seized when it has been given, when love has been exchanged, when the warmth of connection has filled its hours. This is the Enneagram Two's imperative. A day without service, without intimacy, is a day that feels unlived. Seizing the day means giving it away. For the 7, it is not about giving, but kind of gorging, filling time with as much experience, sensation, and movement as possible. The 7 does not hesitate to seize the day. They only hesitate to limit how much of it they can devour. The moment is for the taking, and it must be taken in abundance. And for nines, well, Carpe Diem is a paradox. They want to seize the day, but they also want it to remain gentle, undisturbed and harmonious. The ideal day is one where they have flowed with time, absorbed its essence without disrupting its peace. It's a passive kind of seizing, we might say, like enjoying a warm afternoon with no urgency to move, change, or disrupt their equilibrium. These types do not seize the day as an act of control, but rather as an act of immersion. The moment must be felt, shared, and experienced, not simply conquered, which is more the vibe of the first group. Now we have the existentialists, seizing the day as an intellectual or kind of emotional abyss. For these idiots, seizing the day is not necessarily a conquest, nor a rush for pleasure, an ethical duty, but a kind of meditation on loss itself. For the four, Carpe Diem is less a call to action rather than a sort of tragic obligation, a commitment to feeling life so deeply that it leaves a sufficiently poetic wound. Death is not a threat, but a melancholic stagehand, quietly ensuring that every moment is charged, fleeting, and devastatingly significant. Seizing the day means making it worth mourning. For the five, the day is more of a thought experiment, a problem to be solved before being experienced. Time is not seized so much as measured, dissected and filed away, as if understanding mortality might in some way allow for better terms. Here we seize the day not by living it, but by comprehending it, as though knowing how time works might somehow slow its passing, or failing that, make it less irritating. Neither of these two types runs headlong towards life. Instead, they observe it from a safe distance. The four sinks into it, making it lyrical, catastrophic, and very personal. The five catalogues it, analysing its inevitable dissolution with the detached curiosity of someone checking the expiry date on a tin of beans. For all of these 9-day seizers, one would assume that any mention of eternal dirt naps would only sharpen the resolve to seize the day in one of the above ways. And yet for some morbid types, mainly certain breeds of 4s and 5s, as outlined above, seizing the day in the shadow of death becomes less a call to action and more a study in a kind of exquisite, metaphysical, melancholic futility, which can just as easily double as or dissolve into a kind of self-indulgent, mournful navel-gazing, a kind of high-minded brooding session, if you will, where the day is less seized, then contemplated at length, annotated, and possibly abandoned altogether in favour of staring meaningfully out of a window.
I work all day and get half drunk at night. Waking at 4 to soundless dark, I stare. In time, the curtain edges will grow light. Till then, I see what's really always there. Unresting death. A whole day nearer now. Making all thought impossible, but how and where and when I shall myself die. Arid interrogation, yet the dread of dying and being dead flashes afresh to hold and horrify.
The term Aubade originates from the old French word for dawn, and traditionally refers to a poem or a song about lovers parting at daybreak. One of the earliest known examples is found in medieval Provençal poetry and often depicts a watchman alerting the lovers to the approaching dawn, signalling that it is time to part so as to avoid detection. I didn't understand why, the watchman had to be there, this whole watchman trope. it seems sort of unnecessary. Why wouldn't the lovers themselves narrate their own heartbreak at parting? Some Albers do take this approach, yet the presence of the watchman remains a striking structural choice, one that reveals something essential about the nature, we might say, of parting itself. The watchman is in some way the poet, a kind of merciless, unyielding voice, speaking a truth no one particularly wants to hear and stating it in a manner that cannot be ignored. He is the one who forces recognition, who calls the lovers out of their immersion and demands that they confront the inevitability of separation. He is the external interruption, the unwanted certainty that morning has arrived, whether they are ready for it or not. But more than this, the watchman is also a personification of death. He does not simply mark the ending of an experience, he enacts it. In the Aubade, the ending is the parting of the lovers. In the wider arc of existence, it is the final parting we call life. The lovers do not choose to leave, they are told to. And in the same way, none of us choose our final departure. It is announced without negotiation. By the watchman, we have spent our lives trying to ignore. The lover does not speak because the lover does not wish to acknowledge the end. If the words come from his own mouth, the sun is rising, we must part, it would carry the illusion of choice, of control, as if the departure was something mutually agreed upon rather than something imposed. But the Aubade, is not about control, it's about loss, it's about inevitability, about time pulling us away from what we love before we are ready. The watchman's voice is absolute. He does not negotiate, he does not soften the blow. He arrives, he announces, and the lovers have no choice but to obey. He exists to rupture the moment, to drag them from the intimacy of night into the indifferent daylight of consequence. This is what makes Larkin's subversion of the Alba form so compelling. Aubade has no watchman, no external figure to break the spell, because the voice of the watchman is already inside him, the poet Larkin. His own consciousness has taken up the role, whispering the truth he cannot escape. He wakes not to the departure of a lover, but to the certainty of his own vanishing, his own erasure, his own inescapable dissolution. In this way, Aubade is the most personal of dawn songs, one in which there is no pleading, no stolen final embrace, no lingering glance over the shoulder. There is no parting but one's own from oneself.
The mind blanks at the glare, not in remorse, the good not done, the love not given, time torn off, unused, nor wretchedly because an only life can take so long to climb clear of its wrong beginnings and may never. But at the total emptiness forever, the sure extinction that we travel to and shall be lost in always. Not to be here, not to be anywhere, and soon. Nothing more terrible, nothing more true. This is a special way of being afraid. No trick dispels. Religion used to try that vast moth-eaten musical brocade created to pretend we never die. And specious stuff that says no rational being can fear a thing it will not feel. Not seeing that this is what we fear. No sight, no sound, no touch or taste or smell. Nothing to think with, nothing to love or link with. The anesthetic from which none come round.
As the dawn breaks over roofs laid, hope hung on every washing line. As your heart aches.
If death is the only true lover, then that line in Aubade about not knowing where, when or how we will meet our end takes on an eerie, almost sort of romantic quality. It is no longer just the terror of unpredictability, but the suspense of an encounter long promised and long anticipated, the final rendezvous, the culmination of a relationship that we have been in all along. If death is the only true lover, then it is also the first lover, the one we have known before, the one whose arms we have already rested in. Before birth, we were not. After death, we will not be again. In this way, we are merely on loan from oblivion, temporarily exiled from the state that is, in fact, our natural one. Death is not an intruder, not an enemy, not even an interruption. It is the very condition from which we emerged and to which we will return. Religions, of course, are masterful at spinning something out of nothing, filling in the blank spaces where certainty runs out, not just in terms of creation myths, but also in how they frame the end. Instead of returning to nothing, we are promised to return to something, a unified consciousness, a divine order, a reckoning, a judgment. And naturally, these stories get sweetened or soured depending on one's earthly behavior, right? Paradise for the obedient, torment for the transgressor. In this way, religion turns the unknowable into a moral narrative, giving death structure, meaning, even consequence. It is no longer an indifferent inevitability, but a negotiable outcome, something that can be influenced, bargained with, even cheated if one follows the right script. Larkin, of course, refuses all the scripts. Aubade is the anti-storytelling of death. No reunion, no reckoning, no moral resolution, just the cold fact that it is coming, and no amount of belief, denial, or good behavior changes that. No lover's welcome, just an empty room where something once was. So the question then becomes, do we need the story? Or maybe, is it possible to live fully, meaningfully without one? Without one of those carpe diems. The Epicureans, of course, would say a hearty yes to that. The idea being that non-existence is nothing to worry about because there's no existing to be done in a worried state. And so maybe no significant day-seizing, doing to be done in the face of death either. If death is merely the return to the absence from which we came, then it carries no more terror than the unremembered centuries before our birth.
Look, you're getting on in years, right? Aren't you afraid of dying?
Why should I be afraid?
Because you won't exist.
So?
That thought doesn't terrify you?
Who thinks about such nonsense? Now I'm alive. When I'm dead, I'll be dead.
I don't understand. Aren't you frightened?
Of what? I'll be unconscious.
I know, but never to exist again?
How do you know?
But it certainly doesn't look promising.
Who knows what it'll be? I'll either be unconscious or I won't. If not, I'll deal with it then.
Larkin, ever the anti-Epicurean, does not find comfort in this logic. He understands it, but he does not feel it. Aubade is not the lament of a man seeking solace. It is the howl of one who refuses to be consoled. The problem is not death itself, but the unbearable fact of knowing that it's coming, the shadow in the room that grows longer each day, the lover who will arrive whether we are ready for her or not. Are any of the day seizers, I wonder, truly satisfied by the Epicurean take? It denies the moralists and the achievers the urgency of a task to complete or a battle to win. It denies the experiences, the comfort of a grand emotional or sensory arc, reducing life to a fleeting blip that doesn't need to be indulged or savors. And it denies the existentialists the weight of significance, either tragic or profound, refusing both the Four's desire for poetic meaning and the Five's drive for intellectual mastery. The Epicureans, in a sense, ruin the game for everyone. They dismiss death as a non-event, something that neither demands action nor provides revelation. No reckoning, no grand cosmic design, no way to outsmart or prepare for it, just the light switch as they did before we arrived. Which is why, despite how rational it sounds, almost no one emotionally buys into the Epicurean take. The 1s, 3s and 6s and 8s, they need stakes. The 2s, 7s and 9s, they need engagement. The 4s and 5s need depth. But Epicurus just sits in the corner, shrugging, saying, none of this is your problem. Once you're gone, you're gone. And so, as the world would seem to suggest, everyone just keeps on seizing the day in their own way, fighting against the void in whatever style best suits their neurosis, because ultimately none of us are content to just simply vanish without a fuss. And this is where Woody Allen and Philip Larkin emerge as two peas in a pod, I would say, both possessed by the neurotic certainty that death is coming, as well as the simultaneous absurdity of trying to live with that knowledge. Allen's films are filled with characters who try to intellectualize their fear, to sort of reason their way out of it, to joke about it. Larkin, meanwhile, does not allow himself that luxury. Aubade offers no comfort, no escape hatch, just the brutal, but also brutally hilarious, I would say, recognition that death is approaching, and no amount of thought or feeling will change that fact. Life's a bitch, and then you die, mofos, is sort of Larkin's jaunty take on all of this. Both men, in their own way, are caught between two lovers, life, which they find exhausting, and death, which they cannot bear to acknowledge. And yet at the core of both their work, there is the same plea, the same sort of desperate bargaining. Don't take her away from me. Don't take me away from her. Death, however, like all indifferent lovers, doesn't bargain back. It just simply waits.
And so it stays just on the edge of vision. A small, unfocused blur, a standing chill that slows each impulse down to indecision. Most things may never happen. This one will. And realization of it rages out in furnace fear when we are caught without people or drink. Courage is no good. It means not scaring others. Being brave lets no one off the grave. Death is no different whined at than withstood. Slowly, light strengthens and the room takes shape. It stands plain as a wardrobe. What we know, have always known, know that we can't escape, yet can't accept. One side will have to go. Meanwhile, telephones crouch, getting ready to ring in locked-up offices, and all the uncaring, intricate, rented world begins to rouse. The sky is white as clay, with no sun. Work has to be done. Postmen, like doctors, go from house to house.
So the real tragedy, if you're looking for one, which of course I always am, isn't that we're afraid of death. It's that we're afraid of wasting life, of doing it wrong, of not getting the best possible deal before checkout. And so we grip at the moment, try to carve meaning into the air as if significance could be held, stockpiled, or somehow secured for future use. But in the end, the eternal dirt nap arrives for everyone, and the joke, well, kind of joke, is that we already know this. We've always known this. It stands plain as a wardrobe, to put it into Larkin's language. If death is the only true lover, then that line in Aubade about not knowing where, when, or how we will meet our end takes on an eerie, almost romantic quality. It's not just the terror of unpredictability, but the suspense of an encounter long promised and long anticipated. And yes, one can almost hear someone like Ella Fitzgerald singing this, casting Larkin's existential dread into the lilting melancholy of a Rodgers and Hart tune, something like Where or When, a song that he, as a jazz head, would have known well. It seems we stood and talked like this before. We looked at each other in the same way then, but I can't remember where or when. How perfect is that for Larkin's predicament, the sense of inevitability, of something both timeless and yet completely unknown, exactly like death itself. The irony being, of course, that the song's theme is about the recurrence of love and memory and fate, whereas for Larkin, the only thing that recurs is the march towards extinction. Still, if death is the lover, then Where or When becomes more than just an old jazz standard. It's the waltz that we are all dancing whether we like it or not. And in the meantime, I guess, we rise, we draw back the curtains, we move through the day as if it has a kind of direction, as if time itself, mean or gracious, was something other than a well-rehearsed circuit, like a postman, say, on his route, eyes on the addresses scrawled onto his packages and envelopes, trusting that each destination exists, even if he never sees who opens the door. But that, unfortunately, is the bit that Larkin never wrote.
Seems we stood and talked like this before. We looked at each other in the same way then, but I can't remember where or when. The clothes you're wearing are the clothes you wore. The smile you were smiling then, but I can't remember where or when. Some things that happen for the first time seem to be happening again. And so it seems that we have met before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows where or when. Some things that happen for the first time seem to be happening again. And so it seems we have met before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows where or when.